right, so this is the last video that I'm doing in the walking bassline series. In the final video that we're going to do today, I'm going to do chord, scale, chord approach and chord, scale, scale approach. So the chord is the chord tones, the scale are going to be scale tones, and the approach note is going to be the approach note that I covered in the other videos. So let's do the first one, chord, scale, chord approach. Today I'm going to be connecting C major 7 to D minor 7. So here's the first example. I'm going to do it real slow. What I did is I went from E, which is the third of C major, down a fifth. So notice that this breaks up the scale stepwise motion. We're doing leaps in this routine. The whole point of this routine, which separates it from the next one I'm going to show you, is that this jumping around with the scale tones, you're actually making leaps rather than stepwise motion. So you'll move in intervals greater than a third, or by, I think actually the next routine I'm going to do, it's all going to be stepwise. So in this one, you're getting to the next scale tone, but you're not necessarily doing it stepwise. You're breaking things up. So hence the E down to A, I'm going down a fifth and then moving stepwise. So E goes down to A, scale tone, goes down to a chord tone, which is G, then approaching F by half step, G flat, to F, which is the third. So one more time. That's example 1. Here's example 2. One more time. So in this one, I went from C, the root of the C chord, down to a diatonic scale tone, F, up to the chord tone G, which is the fifth, down, connecting to F by half step again. So it's a variation on the first one. Chord tone, scale tone, chord tone, approach note, chord tone of the D minor 7. Here's a third example. C, the root of the C chord, down to a diatonic scale tone, F, up to a chord tone, G, up a half step to G sharp to connect to A, which is the fifth year D minor 7 chord. C, F, G, G sharp, A. Here's yet another combination of chord, scale, chord approach. One more time. So what I did here is chord tone, C, diatonic scale tone, A, up to a chord tone, the seventh of C, B natural, to an approach note, which is C, being a diatonic approach note from below, to D. I could also make that C a C sharp for a half step approach tone. Or I could approach that D from an E flat. C, A, B, E flat, D. So there's a lot of different combinations. Here's another variation. Root of C, up a diatonic scale tone to D. Breaking it up, down a fifth to G, a chord tone. Half step approach note into F, G flat, to F, the third of D minor 7. Here's one more example. Now this one's pretty diatonic. I'm starting on a chord tone, G, the fifth of C, going up to a diatonic scale tone, D, down to the root of C major, C, to the approach note, B natural, to A, the fifth of D. And in this case, that approach note happens to be diatonic, so it's a diatonic approach note from above. So one more time. G, D, C, B natural, A. Here's one more example. E, the third of C major, down to A, down a fifth, breaking up the stepwise motion. up a minor third to a chord tone, C, C sharp, approach note to connect to D. E, A, C, C sharp, D. So chord tone, scale tone, chord tone, approach. So here's the final one that I'm going to give you in the chord tone, scale tone, chord tone approach routine. Chord tone, C, the root, down to A, down to G, G flat, F. So that's several examples on chord tone, scale tone, chord tone, approach note. And the last routine that I'm going to give you is chord tone, scale tone, approach note. This one's different than the previous one because we're taking advantage of the stepwise motion. It's much more scale type of work where we're getting from point A to point B. So this is the last routine that I'm going to give you. It's chord tone, scale tone, approach note. And the way this is going to work is, unlike the previous example, this does not break up the stepwise motion. It actually takes advantage of the stepwise motion. So we're going to be walking up and down the scale using either diatonic scale tones or half-step chromatic tones to get to where we're going in the next chord. In this example, I'm actually going to use D minor 7 to G7 for the following examples of this particular routine. So it's going to be chord tone, scale tone approach. So starting on the D minor 7, getting to G7, I'm going to start here on C, the 7th of D minor 7. Flat 7th of D minor 7, down a diatonic scale tone, one more diatonic scale tone to the approach note, A flat, to G, the root of G7. C, B, A flat, G. Here's one more example of getting from D minor 7 to G7 using chord tone, scale tone approach. The root of D, up a diatonic scale tone to E, up a diatonic scale tone to F, half-step approach tone, F sharp, takes me to G, the root of G7. Here's one more example of D minor 7 to G7. So this one's really easy, it's all scale tones. 5th of D minor 7, A, going down a diatonic scale tone to G, one more scale tone to F, approach note E, which is a diatonic approach note from above, to D. I could also do a half-step chromatic approach note from above using this. Or a chromatic approach note from below. C sharp to D. Here's yet another example, starting on the 5th of D minor 7. So I started on A, the 5th, down a scale tone diatonically to G, another diatonic scale tone to F, up to F sharp, and then to G, the root of our G7. Okay, here's the final example of our chord tone, scale tone approach routine. Starting on the 5th of D minor, A, up a diatonic scale tone, B, up a diatonic scale tone to C, approach note C sharp to D, the 5th of our G7 chord. One more time. So as I mentioned before, the way you want to practice these is you want to just get the routine down first. So what you want to do is start on one chord and just get to another chord. Then what you want to do is you want to start incorporating them into major 2-5-1s and minor 2-5-1s. Then you want to take a simple turnaround like 1-6-2-5 or 3-6-2-5 or 2-5-1-6 or 2-5-1-5, any kind of a turnaround like that, and start applying these bass lines to that. The next step is to start applying it to 12-bar blues, Then the next step after that is to apply it to a simple standard. And what you want to do is once you have these down pretty well, then you want to start mixing them up at will. And that's when you really get these walking bass lines down. So hopefully these series of videos have helped you go from beginner to at least an intermediate level at walking bass. And hopefully that's answered a bunch of questions about how to approach walking bass lines and how to freely play through changes using walking bass lines.